Hello, it's Lromanosky and Aidan Goss from Calgary, Canada, and we're shooting from the Lugnuts facility. As part of the Bring a Trailer local partner program, I received a couple of Corvettes from a long-term Corvette owner, Corvette guy. I think he has 3 of them at the moment. There was this 1959 C1 and a 2017 Z06 convertible. Okay, so we'll do a walk-around video on this car, the C1, and we'll break it into sections. We'll go through, the exterior condition, interior condition. We'll put it on the hoist, look underneath, look under the engine bay. We'll take it for a drive. Importantly, we'll go through the restoration records on the car so you can get a better idea of what was done to it. And so we'll have a table of contents, and so you can go through it, and you don't have to digest the whole video in one setting. This might take an hour from start to finish. So the story of this car, from the records that I have, was it was a long-term Corvette guy. Went down to Barrett-Jackson, didn't even have a bidder's paddle, but his buddy had one, saw the car, grabbed it, bought the car, and took it back to Calgary. It's barely been driven since. That was in 2013. The car was restored, actually, funny enough, the car was restored in Alberta, near Edmonton, a few hundred kilometers north of us in Calgary. It then found an Arizona buyer after it was restored. And a guy down there had the car for a few years and then consigned it to Barrett-Jackson. I think, probably the most important part of the presentation is just showing what we have for records. So we have all the documentation from Barrett-Jackson. We have the US title that it had. We have presumably a reproduction Corvette owner's manual. We have the reproduction window sheet. So let's get that out. And we can see that it was sold new in Phoenix. Isn't that interesting? So it started in Phoenix, came to Alberta, got restored, went back down to Phoenix, and now it's back in Alberta. Black with a silver cove. I think it's called tuxedo black. Red trim, 4-speed transmission. Now, I understand that, or I read that only 10% of the C1s had the 4-speed manual gearbox. There was also a 3-speed manual. There was also an automatic. So this is one of, as I understand, like 10% of the 4-speed manual. Deluxe heater, signal seeking radio, 670 by 15, 4-ply tires, white convertible top, posi traction axle. So the car has been restored to its original configuration. Okay, so we know that. And then let's just put this away. And if you're interested, the lot number at Barrett-Jackson was 1051.1 when the car was sold. And this reads, driven very few miles since its restoration. The body was removed from the frame and includes photos and tens of thousands of dollars in receipts. It is finished in a desirable and low production color of tuxedo black with silver coves and a red interior. Only 496 of the 9670 in 1959 with those colors. But like I said, I read that the 4-speed transmission makes it extremely rare. It looks and runs and drives excellent. Okay. So then let's take a look at this binder. And looks like it's shot from Arizona. Put it on here so as not to scratch it. Okay, so we have photographs of the finished car, which you can see here. It's in the same condition as it's restored. We have undercarriage shots of the car dating from 20 years ago, from the early 2000s, and the car still looks the same today. And we can see that. Now these are, these show, what do these show? Well, they show they're dropping the engine in the car after it was painted, I guess, after it was painted. And we can see the engine's been painted, the aluminum valve covers. It got a chrome, it had a red oil pan here, but subsequently it's been replaced with chrome. We can see that the chassis was completely disassembled and looks like it was painted. Okay, so it completely came off, so we can see that. What I think is kind of the most important thing is that we can see the chassis, if you want to zero in on these, before it was sandblasted and painted, and it looks straight and it looks solid, and there's no evidence of that it was repaired. In other words, it wasn't a crashed car and rebuilt, or two chassis made into one chassis, or a chassis that was really rusted that needed reconstruction. So that goes to the overall integrity of the chassis, which looks to me like it was completely rust-free, and all they did was sandblast and paint it. Okay, and then we can see all the other components that are painted. There's another good shot of the chassis, which shows that it to be unrusted. Okay, so that would be important to me if I was buying the car. And of course, as you'd expect, all new suspension and brakes and so on, and all the looks like that's some new parts versus the old parts, and gearbox, etc. Okay, so there's some photos of the gearbox. Now, I had a car restored back then in Canada, and I think the labor rate was $40 an hour in the late 90s and early 2000s. Today the labor rate's at least $100, if not $150 an hour. This car, I mean, any car, to just take it apart and redo every single piece and put it together professionally is going to be 100,000 Canadian. Even the cheapest, smallest, like a VW Beetle, is going to be more than $100,000. A car like this, with Corvette prices, with lots of chrome, if it was in Alberta and you started today, this would be $200,000 Canadian dollars. So whatever, 140 US or whatever that happens to be. It just wouldn't be less than that. The cost of restoration has just gone up so much. Cost of parts, shipping, now new tariffs. Like it would take you 2, 3, 4 years to get it done. You might wait 2 years to get it in. Okay, so if you wanted a Corvette like this, you're looking at potentially up to 5 years and $200,000 before you get it back. Okay, so getting somebody, having somebody else go through the trouble for you, and is a massive time and money saver. Okay, so we've got in this book, we've got all the invoices for all the money, for all the parts spent on the car. We have an appraisal here done in '07, so presumably that's when the car was complete, I would guess, for $65,000 way back then. And then we've got a listing of the options of the car, all the things you could have. And so I think this one just has the 280, I think I said 289, I meant 283 engine. And then we've got, I guess we've got a little book here with more of the restoration photographs. Okay, so you can see it all being completely disassembled. And it shows what it shows though is that this car wasn't too bad when you started. And I can tell you from doing restorations on cars, it makes a heck of a difference. Not just extra time and money if the car is rough, just the integrity of the finished product is a lot better if you started with something that's a solid example. Okay, so we have this restoration binder which goes with the car. We can do a walk around now of the interior and the exterior, and I can point out any flaws on the car. So the car was restored in the early 2000s. It looks like it was finished in around 2007. Moved from Calgary to Arizona, from Arizona to back to Calgary. It's been stored in a climate-controlled garage, of course, as you would an expensive collector car. But we can go around the car now and just see how has this restoration held up, you know, in 20 years, and you know, has it picked up any wear, you know, from mostly just sitting around during that time. So what I would suggest is the most important thing is the bodywork. And if you start with a really rough body and you've got you know, you've got a car with fiberglass body damage and so forth, and you use a lot of filler, you know, to fix it, and then paint it, it won't last very long before you start to see the imperfections in the body, because what happens is that the filler dries out, and then you start to see the prep marks, and oftentimes even the filler will dry to such a point that it'll start cracking, and then even coming off the car. So when you have a paint job that's 20 years old, like this one, you know, it gives you a pretty good indication of what you started with, because any like really big flaws or evidence of poor work that you might not notice when the car is freshly painted, you will notice after a couple decades, because those flaws will come through. So close examination of the car, looking for prep marks, sanding marks, cracking of filler, cracking of gel coat, various you know, seams where, you know, pieces of fiberglass were put together. I don't see any of that on this car. I just don't see any. I don't see any evidence of poor prep work. I don't see any evidence of excess filler. Normally with steel cars, I have a paint meter, so I can go around and see what's there in terms of material depth. But of course, in a fiberglass car, you can't do that. But I'm not seeing anything. Overall, there's some very light scratching, you know, just from people being around the car. So, you know, it could, you know, you wouldn't even need a 3-stage polish. You know, the car could benefit from, you know, a light polish. But I don't see any sanding marks. I don't see any, like I said, I don't see any evidence of filler drying out or any imperfections. So that's a huge plus. It means that, probably means that what happened was that they started with a really good car that didn't need a lot. And also we saw that with the chassis as well, that the chassis was unrusted. So the next thing I'd look at is the panel gaps. Now, if you have a car that's been apart, where parts of it have damaged, you might get replacement doors or a replacement hood or replacement fenders. You might have to splice in new parts where there was old parts, etc. Getting the car back together so that the panel gaps are good can be extremely difficult or almost impossible. So if you have a car that was never damaged and didn't need a lot of repairs, then you know, you stand and you take it apart. Generally, it'll go back together with the same gaps that it had before. Keep in mind, C1 Corvettes were not known for their perfect panel gaps. Okay, so this car looks to me like it was better than the factory. I don't know how, but if we look at these gaps here for the door, you know, it's pretty good. Consistent all the way around. The door, you know, doesn't sit proud of the rear quarter, and when we open and shut the door, it shuts cleanly. We don't see any evidence that this striker has been moved around. We don't see any evidence that there's chafe marks from any part of the door closing, chafe marks on the sill, etc. A lot of restored cars, they'll have shiny paint, but you'll see marks where, you know, the doors didn't fit properly. So I don't see any of that. If I look through the sills, there's no scuffing on the sills, and again, everything closes like it should. Let's go to the fuel filler cap. We see it here again. It fits nicely. Looks like factory to me. The door gap on the driver's door looks exactly the same as on the passenger side. And again, we've got even gaps throughout. And on the hood. So for the hood, it looks like it's sitting a little bit proud on this side compared to that side, but I think that that's actually a striker. That's an adjustment issue. Nothing to do with the actual gap around the hood, okay? So overall, the panel gaps look excellent. Like I said, especially, we'll check the trunk too, especially since C1 Corvettes were not known for even panel gaps. And we'll look at the one for the trunk as well. And it's even throughout. And I think, you know, the top of the lid sits a little bit proud of the fender here. And it's exactly the same size, exactly the same on this side. And I suspect that's the way it came out of the factory. It doesn't look lopsided, and it's sitting evenly on the car. Okay. All right, so that's the overall state of the body, the fitting of the body panels. And now, I guess what could be next would be the condition of all the trim and the chrome, which has got to be really expensive. I'd hate to price all of that stuff out. I'm sure that is in the tens of thousands of dollars today. So we can look through all these pieces, and it looks to me like just about everything's new. I think I see this top rail here is a little bit more faded than this one. I suspect that's an original piece, and these are all new pieces. They just look, I suspect that is the case, although I don't really know that. All the trim pieces look good. They're not pitted or oxidized. The fit is good. There's no dents that I can pick up. The grill, I can see this right here. Looks like it had a chunk taken out of it, and then it was re-chromed. Okay, so I'll point that out. And otherwise, the chrome that I see and all the trim looks good. Looks like we have the correct fasteners in place. And there's a lot of chrome pieces on this car. Side strakes look good, the mirror. A lot of guys get fussed about what the stamp on the back of the mirror is, made in USA. And I don't know, something Y50. Can't read it. Okay, so the stamp's there on the mirror. And looks like it has all the correct hardware. The light lenses are uncracked, uncrazed, and they're still clear. We can point out this that is still in nice shape. I suspect that's an original piece that's been cleaned up. Rear bumper looks excellent, and we don't have, you know, any staining or any appreciable staining around the exhaust outlet, which would indicate an engine that maybe is running too rich. Okay, so we can look at the wheels. Now we've got a bias ply wheel made in Canada, Broadway Classic, 205 70R15, and I think that's a Canadian-made tire. So it's a bias ply white wall tire, looks correct. in the correct profile of the car. And the wheel covers with the spinners are all in excellent shape. So we can do a pan of the side of the car. And these tires, of course, I don't think they have a date code on them. I think I looked, but we can assume they're from 2005 or something like that. But the car's been stored well enough that I don't think you need to replace these. There's no dry cracking at all. Okay, so that's the tires. We can look at all four of them here. Okay, so that's the exterior. If we were to pick out imperfections, I mean, there's a couple marks in it here. We have one stone chip there. We have a little mark here. We have a handful, I would say, of tiny little chips. This windscreen can't be cheap to replace. I don't see any chips in it. There's one little one here, so we can get that. Down the sides, there's no scratches, there's no door dings, there's no chips. Sometimes the edges of the doors can pick up chips. I don't see any here. Again, we can look at this striker plate and the sill, and there's no scuffing indicating poor fitment of doors. There's a little touched up mark here that somebody's touched up. And I mean, that's about it. I mean, if we say this car's restoration is 20 years old and it's picked up a few tiny, and maybe 200-300 miles of it and put on it since the restoration, it's picked up a little bit of wear from that time, but it really still shows as a freshly restored car. You have to get within, a couple feet of the car to notice any imperfections at all. And the same goes for inside the car. We've got carpets which still look fresh. We've got the vinyl, which doesn't show any wear or rips, tears, or so on. The dash is in good shape. Instruments look good. They're all the instruments appear to have been rebuilt. Chrome trim around the gear selector and so on all looks good. This piece here, we can see a little bit of denting from this piece. I don't know what from, but this piece here we can see a little bit of wear. But that's just original. I don't think that really detracts from the car. So inside as well as out, the car, the car shows as freshly restored. I guess if you look at it, if you look at the passenger seat and the driver's seat, there's a little bit of difference between the two because, of course, probably nobody's ever been in the passenger seat. But again, still doesn't. It's just honest wear from a few hundred miles of the car sort of settling in. So I can't think of anything other relevant to share with you about the presentation of the car. I guess number one is you're much, much further ahead buying somebody else's restoration than trying to commission one yourself. It will take you years and years and years, and you will spend 2 or 3 times as much as getting one that's restored, especially when you compare the prices in the early 2000s to today. Okay, so you've got that. The questions you're going to ask are, well, how well was the restoration done? Were there any corners cut and so on? A lot of when the prices, the collector cars showed rapid appreciation, there was a lot of guys who were just slapping them together with a fresh coat of paint and, flipping them and making lots of money, not really taking the time to do it properly. And with restorations, that's really the key, is time and patience to do things right versus to do things quickly. If you're operating strictly from a profit motive, it's really difficult to not compromise the restoration of the car, because so many times they just get hung up on silly little things, and the tendency is to just kind of blow over them and make something work and not necessarily do it correctly. So in evaluating this restoration, it all looks pretty good. And critically, it looks like what they started with was a good car, because I don't see any evidence of any body work, either from the top side or looking at it from underneath. Don't see any prep issues that would indicate a lot of filler in the car. We looked at the chassis, photographs of the chassis before they started, and it looked, the chassis looked in perfect shape. Just a quick sandblast and a paint. Didn't look like it was damaged, welded together, new sections weren't welded into it. So it looks like they started with a good base. And then the quality of the work done. Well, they certainly took it all apart. Sometimes, it's just the top of the car that looks restored. And, they didn't feel like taking the wiper motor apart. They didn't feel like taking a generator and an alternator and, all those other parts. And they may have used the same gas tank. They may have used, they may have saved money where they could. There's a big difference between that and a nut and bolt ground up restoration, where you take the entire car apart and then you refurbish or replace each individual part and then put it back together. So that describes this car. Okay, so that is a huge vote of confidence. So I think what you've got is a decent example, really decent example of a well-restored 59 Corvette. I mean, there's another level to get to the JCNA 100 point, or the, however they rank Corvettes, where, you go into each individual fastener and so forth, and, is it exactly the way it came out of the factory, and was the overspray in the same, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's this car. I see some modern fasteners here and there. I don't get the impression that it was designed to be restored to win a Corvette, national Corvette meet, but it would probably win a local meet. And so I think this car was built as, an excellent driver, and like a beautifully restored example, without going to the extreme of trying to win national champions with it. So I think if that's what you're expecting, the way I've described the car, you're going to be very happy with the car. I didn't see any surprises, any evidence of poor work, any red flags that came out, going through this car thoroughly. Okay. Okay, so looking at the engine bay, what I can tell you is it's clear that it's a ground-up restoration. Every nut and bolt. There's no part of this car anywhere underneath or in the engine bay or on the outside that isn't a new or refurbished part. So every single bit of this has been done. We've got the alloy finned valve covers and chrome air cleaner, and the cover for the distributor, which is chrome, and the oil pan is chrome. So I'm not sure what all of that would have been chrome from the factory. It looks like it has a stock generator. It's been, there's some sympathetic sort of modifications, but parts. It has the braided aluminum water hoses. And otherwise, it just looks like a restored car. I can't really fault it. I don't really see any evidence of any any part of the restoration that's failing, either the inner fiberglass panels or any of the new parts. The the belts and so on. The restoration was done 20 years ago, but I don't see it. The car's always been well stored. I don't see any deterioration of any of the rubber parts, and it doesn't leak. I think was there a small drip under this or no drip? Do you recall?
Super tiny.
Super tiny, yeah. So it's
as old cars do, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to find 70-year-old car that doesn't leak a little bit, but there's no puddle and there's no seeping from any of the gaskets or so on, no water leaks, no oil leaks, etc. Okay, so with that, the engine number is stamped down there. We'll show it, and I know the Corvette guys can decode that and figure out which factory it was built at and so on. So we'll list all those numbers. Everything looks, and I took care to photograph any stamping or number which I could see, which was relevant. Okay, so that is the engine bay on the Corvette. It presents presents as a newly restored car, even though. Okay, so we can get a good look at the chrome and the front valence, and again, it's a ground up restoration. It doesn't look to me that there was any corners cut at all. I mean, sometimes what looks like a ground up can be partial. I mean, sometimes there's a combination of old parts and new parts and so on. This looks. I mean, everything looks to be either new or rechromed. I don't see basically any piece at all that looks like it has any age-related deterioration. Okay, so all the chrome is bright. There's no pitting, no oxidation. It's all straight. It's all level. The light lenses are all clear. Okay, so we move underneath the car, and what can we see? Okay, well, we've got I mean, obviously, the whole thing's been taken apart. Each of the pieces would have been media blasted and then painted. It looks like, I'm not sure if it's powder coating or paint. It looks to me like it's probably painted. It's got a satin finish, like the chassis satin black. We can see what looks to be all the correct hardware, all the correct plating. We don't see any corrosion on that. I'm not a C1 Corvette expert. I can only tell you if it looks right to me, and it does. Okay. I have a completely original C3 Corvette, which isn't actually all that different underneath, and I see all the same finishes, the same welds in the chassis, and so a lot of that's familiar from what I know to be a completely untouched C3. So using that as a basis, this looks all correct to me. I mean, I don't think they came from the factory with chrome oil pans. I mean, that's likely a modification. Probably they didn't have the inline fuel filter there, but that's a good idea. I don't see any of these under trays. I mean, I guess we've got a fastener missing there, I suppose. Really, you're really stretching to find any flaws under here. Critically, the frame looks laser straight. It's got a really nice finish on it. Of course, we expect to see new brake lines throughout, new cables and so on. I don't see any evidence of welding. Sometimes that, if the car's in an accident, the chassis is bent, you have to heat it up and maybe put in a new section or something like that. I don't see any evidence of that at all, of any chassis repair. So it looks to me that they probably started with a rust-free car, and we have the evidence in the photo manual, but there's nothing here that looks worked on or manipulated or distorted by heat or has sloppy welds. All this stuff, this is all factory for sure. I don't see any evidence of accident damage. Again, I see original finishes, original parts. I don't see anything that looks out of place on a 1959 car. There's no, I mean, you know, some of the exhaust hangers maybe have a light dusting of corrosion just from sitting. Obviously, this car hasn't been driven. I'd be surprised if it had more than, well, I don't think it has 500 miles on it. You know, again, little bits of corrosion just from sitting, but none of the, you know, all the correct, you know, all, like I said, I'm not a C1 expert, but this all looks correct 1950s to me. And, you know, the fabric straps are on other 50s cars that I've had. What else can I say? I mean, no rust in between the leaf springs. Little bit of corrosion starting here. Again, on the exhaust hangers. Nothing extraordinary. It looks like a ground up restoration that, you know, has sat for, you know, a number of years, which is, you know, exactly what the car is. No surprises. Critically, again, there's no evidence that anything was ever damaged or not restored properly. And this car looks to me like a totally straight original frame that was just refinished. And I don't see any evidence of any problems underneath this car. Okay, it all looks really good to me. It all looks like it was properly restored, and is still in, you know, restored condition. Okay, so on to the next section. Okay, so this will be a continuation of our Corvette driving day. We just got out of the C3 and from 1978, and so now we're going back 20 years to a 1959 C1. And so we'll do a cold start video. Aidan will show you what comes out of the tailpipe. Then we'll get in the car, look at some of the gauges, and then we'll take it for a short drive. I'm looking forward to this one. This is a cool car. So I'll give Aidan the microphone, and you can put that next to the exhaust. Okay, so I'll take the microphone back and then we'll just run it around the engine. A lot less cluttered than the one in the C3. So the valve train's perfectly quiet. I don't get any noise from the water pump or the generator. Rev it for me a little bit. Yeah, beautifully smooth. Runs like a brand new engine. Hold it at about 1500 RPM. All right, well, it sounds very sweet under there to me. Can't detect any unusual noises at all. Runs beautifully. Okay. Okay, so what have we got here? Well, we've got a quarter of a tank of fuel. We're showing some temperature, just over 100 degrees. Our battery isn't charging according to this gauge. At least at idle. We've got almost 60 psi of oil pressure, and the car is cold. Okay, buttons for lights, for wipers. All right, there we go. You got wipers. And what's this? Cigarette lighter, and we've got a radio. Looks like the original type radio. Oh no, it's a reproduction. It's got CD and a couple other things in it. Okay, so we've got like some sort of a modern radio in there. We've got the defroster fan, and it does work on low and high. We've got a temperature control and an air control. The clock, it's set at 4, so do you hand wind it? So we'll see if that works. Okay, so that rolls up. I think we had trouble with it before. I'm not sure why.
You have to push it.
Oh, you have to push it in a little bit.
And wind down.
Okay, okay. So let's go. And so the later cars, or at least the C3, is a hydraulic clutch. This has a mechanical clutch. I think the adjustment could be, like, I'm having to push the clutch all the way in. So I suspect that adjustment could be changed a little bit, because I feel like I should have a little bit more. I feel like I shouldn't have to press it right to the floor to get it to release all the way. So I think that maybe could use adjustment. Engine's certainly tractable. Brakes have good bite. No power steering in this car. Really tall gears in it. Completely different feel from the C3. I guess no surprise. These are rough roads. So they're not really sports car roads. Lots of trucks and stuff. Ruts in the roads. I think I just started in 3rd gear. Yeah, that's 3rd gear. I just started in 3rd gear and didn't even know. That's how tractable the engine is. So there's, I mean, it's on bias ply tires, so you're not expecting something like this to track totally straight on a rough road. But there's no slop in the steering. Shift quality is good. Check the synchromesh. Pretty good. Engine is unfussy. Brakes pull a little bit. You know, I'm not sure. Again, the car, I mean, I wouldn't be doing anything to this car unless I drove it for a while, because it only has 300 miles in the last like 20 years. And so, you know, all kinds of things happen to cars when they sit around. They need, you know, they need to get driven. And so I love the seating position, which is very 50s. Reminds me of my Austin Healey that I had, where the steering wheel's close to you. So your hands are in, the wheel's big, and you sit relatively upright. You know, it's not the same as the, you know, the race car, you know, position of, you know, of a more modern Corvette. And this just feels a little bit more kind of dignified, I suppose I would characterize. Just sitting up more, you know, your shoulders are well above the belt line, so you can put your arm out the window in typical Corvette fashion. And it's a wonderful, I don't know, ambiance experience. It's
Feels great.
it feels cool, doesn't it? Like it feels like you're in something special.
You can tell that everybody's looking at you.
Everybody's looking at you. All right, so we got 10 minutes of running. Water temperature's up to about 175. Oil pressure's still just a tick below 60. Still doesn't gauge still doesn't indicate that the battery's charging, although it might just be the gauge. We'll see. So at speed, we're now doing about 50 miles an hour. So we don't see any vibration from the tires. If I'm on the brakes, no pulsation from the brakes. There's no shakes, cowl shake, or shaking from the rest of the body. It feels pretty solid. Steering, like I said, there's no free play in the steering at all. It's comfortable, no suspension noises. Everything, it's not like any of the suspension has been seized from sitting around. So like if I'm on the brakes like 50%, it stops square. If I really get on the brakes, it starts to pull to the left. So that is something.
It's drum brakes all around, right?
Drum brakes all around. And like I said, it feels like it needs a clutch adjustment because if you don't push the pedal all the way to the floor, then it won't engage the gear. So I don't think that's quite right. So I think it needs a little bit of adjustment there. Temperature is still under 180. When you're on the move, the clutch is fine. It's only at standstill that you really have to press the pedal in. There's no gearbox whines, no bearing noises from the wheels, no noises coming through the engine compartment, rattles from the exhaust. It feels tight and solid. Fuel pressure is still 50 psi.
You also notice how everyone parks behind you, but they park like 30 meters back.
Yeah.
They don't want to be too close.
Yeah. Signal lights work. All right, so we're bringing this car back home. And what can we say about the way it drives? Well, it's a 20-year-old restoration that hasn't been only driven, 300 miles and has sat for most of the last 20 years or even more. So it could probably use some, somebody just to drive it. What the issues that we found are that the tach is inoperative. We have, I think, it shifts well. The synchros are good. There's no transmission noise. I'm sure the clutch is new. It wouldn't make sense to not have a new clutch, but I think the clutch needs some adjustment because you really have to push the pedal to the floor when you're at standstill to get first gear or reverse. So that's something. The brakes will pull to the left. Fires right up. The engine's beautiful. No noises at all. Runs beautifully. Performance is good, and the car feels tight. It deals with the bumps well, and like I said, there's no play in the steering. It doesn't feel like it's like something. It feels all correct to me. Okay, so. And so with that'll conclude the driving video on this 59 Corvette. Thanks a lot. So to sum up, I would say that one, it's a really pretty car. It's great colors. It has wonderful 50s style. It's a significant piece of American automotive culture. It's one of the later C1s, just when Corvette was finding its place. It started out kind of like a personal luxury car. Then Zora Arkus Duntov got involved to try to make it a sports car, which he did. It is a beautifully restored car. that looks like it was done well, done properly, done professionally, and critically, it looks like it started, the base was good, like the base car was unrusty, and it looks like all the bodywork was intact. So it didn't need a lot of invasive body and chassis work, other than just cleaning stuff up and refurbishing and recoating. I would say that it's good value, considering the cost of duplicating it. Would be, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that the car would be, as an ownership proposition, it's easy to drive, and unfussy car with mechanicals that are easy to look after, and it's cheap to maintain. So I think this car would be, a welcome addition to any collection. It's a significant car. It's also a very pretty car, and it's got it's practical. It's easy to drive. You can look it in your garage and just keep it as an addition to your collection, or take it to club meets, take it for drives, go get ice cream with it, take your kids around in it, etc. And it's usable, drivable, pretty, and unfussy, and also I think a really good buy. Getting somebody else's ground-up restoration for a fraction of the cost. So with that, I'll leave it. Lromanosky and Aidan Goss from the Lugnuts facility in Calgary. And this car will be on an online auction, and it will be looking for its next custodian. Maybe it's you. Please like and subscribe.